Hey everyone! Welcome back to Marshall's Marital Musings. I'm Elizabeth and this is Dusty, and today we are just going to kind of have a conversation with you all. I have been participating in kind of a group study over the last few months with some friends of mine through a Facebook group. And this month's focus is on spending and money control and really focusing on that. And one of the questions that one of the moderators in the group that I'm in asked was, what are your thoughts on money and spending and giving and debt and all of those good things? And it's got us starting to think and kind of talk about where we're at. We've had some life changes with our situations over the last few weeks. So we've been really thinking about finances and budgeting and how that works within our marriage. So we wanted to come on here and just kind of have a conversation about how we have been handling those things.
Yeah, and it's not the first time for us to handle things like that. When we lived in New Mexico, we went through quite a few different things, and life threw us all kinds of curveballs, and our finances were up and down here and there, and we knew we didn't have a firm grasp on it, and it led to quite a bit of our fights, I would say. There's some funny stories, and for those of you who know me personally, feel free to ask me. I'll share them with you. You'll get a good laugh out of them. But that was one of the things we learned early on in our marriage, was that wherever our finances were, if we weren't on the same page, we found ourselves very much in conflict inside of our own home more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, we fought a lot. I came from a very strong independent background. I wanted to be my own manager, my own boss. I didn't want to have to worry about any of that idea of combining things. Whatever I earned when I worked was my money, and what he earned when he worked was his money. And whenever bills weren't getting paid, we did a lot of that back and forth of whose fault. We played the blame game a lot, which was never good.
Yeah.
And so shortly after we were married, we'd probably been married for about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
Well,
roughly.
no, not even quite that much. It was about 1.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We were lucky enough that the church that we were attending hosted a Financial Peace University course that Dave Ramsey has created, and we decided, this is there. Jobs have changed, things are getting harder. Why not? They were offering scholarships, so we got a scholarship to be able to attend the course. We didn't have to worry about where that extra $100 was coming from.
Yeah.
And so we went through the Financial Peace University course. At that time it was 13 weeks. They have since cut it down to 9. But in the chapter in the book that he's written, Financial Peace Revisited, he talks about how the top 4 areas that create conflict are religion,
your in-laws.
religion, in-laws, parenting,
parenting,
and money.
Yeah.
And we found that is incredibly accurate.
Yeah. But I have pretty good in-laws. I'm just saying, if you guys are watching, I love you. Don't hate me. I still want to be the favorite son-in-law. I'm just throwing it out there.
But he says if you can get on the same page about those 4 areas, then your marriage can pretty much make it through anything.
Yeah.
So over the course of our marriage, over the last 10 years, we'll be honest, our budget has kind of done this. We haven't really stuck to it per se. We're actually in the process of revamping that system.
Yeah.
But what has come about is that we don't fight nearly as much because we understand each other a lot better. Dave points out that every marriage typically is going to have one of 2 different kinds of people. You're going to have what they call the free spirit. And they're the ones that just spend and have a nice time and float through life and everything's beautiful and budgeting is not necessary. There's no time for that. God, if it's God's bill, or if it's God's will, it's God's bill. Right?
Yeah, something like that.
He's going to get us taken care of. But then there's always that other partner that's the nerd. And they're the one that's like, lock it down, penny pincher. We don't need to spend that extra 30 cents on something that's silly, even if it's going to last a little bit longer.
Actually, in our relationship, we're both a little bit of each one of those things. In certain areas, I am very much the nerd and the guy who worries about the numbers when we start spending certain things. But if we start spending on the things that I like that involve my own nerddom and comic books and other things like that I enjoy, I think I'm more apt to not worry so much about how much money we have. And I think Liz is kind of the same way in some areas as well, that neither one of us are 100% one or the other. However, Liz is much more the numbers individual and understanding that we have the numbers and that finances are low, but I am much more the individual that sits down and is able to put a budget together and try to get it more written out. But I can't do that really unless I have her to be able to look at and understand where our finances are and what she's thinking. So it's kind of become a very much of a team effort, and we put both of those things on ourselves sometimes. So like if she ever goes to Staples, it's over, man. We're just spending whatever we got.
I do have a little bit of an office supply addiction. I should probably look into a program for that. But that's another story for another day. One of the things that we have found is communication is very important. I have had a tendency throughout our marriage that even if I know that our bank account is a little on the lighter side, if there's something that he wants, I will tell him to go for it. And then I'll figure out a way to make it work. And that's gotten us into trouble.
Yeah.
A lot of times, because I don't want to feel like the bad guy. I don't want to feel like the mean one who's taking away all the fun. So I've had to really learn that it's not personal, it's business. Really, whenever I have to say, no, sorry, I know you really want that new comic book that just came out and it's super exciting, but we just can't today. So maybe they'll hold it for you, or maybe we can find it again another time. And on the same side, I have to be willing to say, I know I really want that new, whatever, name it, planner or new set of pins, but I can live without it. It's not something that I have to have, because ultimately we want to make sure that our four walls are built.
Right.
Right.
That's the main thing we got to look at and understand is when I ask Liz, like if there's something I want to buy or something that I want to get, I'm not asking because I want to get it and I want to buy it and I don't care how much money we have. I'm honestly asking because not only is that something that I want, but I really do want to know if we have the finances for it, because I don't want to put my family in a position to where my spending on something that honestly is not as important as my family hurts my family in the long run. So that's where we've got to find ways to communicate, and I've had to encourage Liz through all of that. Like she said, she doesn't want to feel like she's the bad guy. She doesn't want to, make me feel like I'm a terrible person just for asking for something like that, or saying, hey, do we have it in our budget or our finances to go buy things like that. And the same thing with her as she looks at some of the things that she wants, is that it's okay for us to look at each other and go, the money's just not there. We don't have it. And that's why it's important to have a budget and work on that budget. And like we said, we're not perfect in that area. Trying to make a budget and do those types of things and have that happen, we haven't always set it up right, and sometimes we haven't always followed it, and other times we have. More often than not, we probably haven't. So Dave Ramsey, if you ever see this, we apologize, but you're a very smart man. We appreciate you. But that's the main thing that you have to understand too, inside of the context of a marriage, when you're dealing with your finances, is you have to be honest with what you have. You shouldn't overspend what you make, and that's a complication a lot of people have. A lot of people want to get themselves in debt and buy things on credit and start treating debt as if it's a good thing, mainly because you don't want to hurt each other's feelings. And so you'll just go, it's okay, just go put that on the card and you can have whatever you want. And for us, we just don't think that's a healthy thing inside of a marriage. And all of the marriage counseling and pre-marriage counseling that I've done, I've never counseled anybody to take credit cards and use that as a mode to pay for things and do things and set yourself up, because I don't think debt is a good thing. Now I understand when we're dealing with cars and we're dealing with houses, those are big purchases and there's going to be some debt incurred inside of that, but it's how you handle those things. But when there's other smaller things, like I'm putting my groceries on my credit card, I've probably misstepped somewhere with my own finances and my own life decisions to where that's not what I should be doing with that. So those are the things that I think we have to look at and be okay with saying it's not there, and trust each other when you start asking those questions. Don't just try to get mad at the other one and go, I can never get what I want. Just trust each other and understand that when you're giving that answer, you're giving that answer purposely and for a reason, because of where your family's at and the things that you need to do rather than the things that you want to do.
Right. And one of the other things that we've made a priority in the process of this is being honest with our kids. Our older kids are 8 and 6. And, a lot of parents will shy away from having financial conversations with their kids, and they won't really talk about it. But we are very open with our older kids about why we can't go to McDonald's today, or why we can't buy that 50-cent toy, even if 50 cents doesn't seem like a lot of money. But we're very open and honest with them because we want them to understand the gravity of the situation and what finances can be, and why it's important that we are good stewards with what we've been given, and why it's important that we have these budgets. Whenever we do sit down to do our budget meetings, we make sure that they know what's going on, and we talk to them and we explain to them that we have a certain number of dollars that we can spend, and each dollar has been given a name, and sometimes that name has on it, Colin can spend this, and sometimes it doesn't. It just kind of depends on the ebb and flow of our finances. But we really want our kids to understand as they grow up the importance of saving and the importance of giving, and the importance of knowing where their money is going, and them telling their money what to do instead of their money telling them what to do. Because ultimately we're not raising children, we're raising future adults who have to be functioning in the world. And we grew up in an age where it was, get those student loans and get that credit started and do those things. And our parents were as helpful as they could be in those situations, but they were working from the same principles and the same mindsets. And we don't want that for our kids. We don't want our kids starting out their lives with $25,000 in debt like we have. So we're working on slowly doing that. But we want our kids to understand, take some time, save up some money. College doesn't have to happen right away. And if you don't have the finances, that's fine. But even those big purchases, cars, you don't have to go out and get a loan for a car. Yeah. Take the bus, walk, carpool with friends, do what you need to do while you save up that money, and then go pay for that car with cash.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, you save up a little bit more, you trade it in, you get a little bit better vehicle, and eventually you've got the car of your dreams, and you've paid fractions for it because you were smart with the way you've done it. Again, houses are a little bit different. Yeah. But so how do we make sure that communication line stays open then? What's the suggestion that you have for keeping those communication lines open?
I think we just have to be honest with each other. Is that as you spend money, you can't sit back and spend money without taking into consideration the other person in the relationship. Especially when your money's become both of yours. It's sustaining each one of you. It's paying your bills. It's keeping a roof over your head. It's putting clothes on your back. And so you have to be willing to have that line of communication open, that your finances may be in a spot that you do have to call the other one up and go, hey, I'm out and about, or I'm at work and I'm gonna take my lunch break, or whatever's going on, and you just go, I need to know, is this going to hurt us, or is this going to hurt you with your plans and what you need to do if I go and buy a burger, or I go out and eat with some of my friends who have invited me out to eat? for dinner tonight, or for lunch this afternoon, or for coffee in the morning. Sometimes you have to have those conversations, and other times you may be in a position to where those are those purchases each one of you can make without having to call one another. But if you're having to spend something over $50 to $100, you probably just want to make that a constant point of being able to talk to each other. I know for us that we both have our bank account. We both have our names on that bank account. Both of us have access to that bank account. And to be truthful, Liz really looks at our bank account more than I ever do. She knows what's in there and where we're sitting and what our savings looks like much better than what I do. And that's something that I trust her with, and has turned out to be pretty well, because I know where I'm at as a person when we spend. So part of me, as from that Christian perspective of being the head of the household and being the leader in the household, I understand that the other part of that is I have to trust her as well in certain things where I find my weak points. And that one of my weak points is, if I know we have money there, sometimes I just will get kind of tunnel vision of what I want, and I won't consider everybody else. And so I've got to make sure I have accountability in quite a few things. And so that's where Liz has come alongside and has really helped me with that. So those are the things that you can do is, make sure you know it's in your bank account. Make sure each one of you have access to it. Talk about your finances. Talk about your paycheck before it gets here, of what bills are coming up, what needs to get paid. Start putting a name to every penny you're going to spend. If you have a paycheck that's, $450 and your rent is going to be every ounce of that, then talk about it that way and go, okay, our rent is this much and your paycheck's going to cover that, and we're not going to have much left. So how are we going to work this? What do we need to do? Is it going to be okay for us to shift things around? Do we need to pull out of savings? But if you don't have those conversations, then you get paid, and all of a sudden you're starting to try to figure out, well, what am I going to spend my paycheck on? And then you start having a conversation, you start getting in an argument, you start having a fight, instead of having that discussion well before your paycheck ever came in. And so those are the types of things I think we try to do, is we try to discuss it, and we never try to spend money that the other one doesn't know about, because the last thing we want is one of us to look at the bank account and think we can pay bills, and all of a sudden the money's not there because we weren't communicating to each other of what we were doing with our money.
That's right. And I also think, implementing that envelope system and spending cash as many places as you can.
Yeah.
Sometimes that debit card can get a little hot and heavy. And so it's a lot harder to spend cash, I've found, especially whenever you just cashed your paycheck and you've got those crisp $100 bills. You don't want to see that turn into smaller 20s and 5s and 10s and 1s. So when you purposely choose to use cash instead of using that debit card, it becomes a little more personal, I think. And one of the other things is we've put a spending cap. So neither one of us can spend more than $20 without consulting the other person. Some people go high as $50 to $100. We know our situation, and 20 is about our max.
Yeah.
If it's going to be over that, then we usually stop and we communicate on where we're at. But sometimes, when he has to stop at the gas station and put gas in the car, $2, $3, $4 for candy bars and sodas and stuff, that's kind of within his spending. Just as long as I get the receipt at the end of the day, or like you said, I'm pretty good at checking the bank account, and I know when he's hit Jack in the Box 3 times on the way home.
Tacos, man. Tacos.
So that's where we're at, and that's kind of one of the things that we've been talking about, is really making sure that no matter where you're at in your finances, you may be completely financially set, and you may be able to give and share the wealth like no other, and you may also be the other person that's at the bottom of the well.
Yeah.
But no matter where you're at, you can always get to a better place as long as you're coming together. Yeah. Not only between you and your spouse, but incorporating God within that mix, and coming to your budget with prayer and an open mind and being reasonable, and really taking time to just communicate with each other, and staying on the same page. And it eliminates 90% of your arguments over finances, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. And that's, that's one of the things that you have to understand is, that's a lot of the counseling that I've had to do through the years is a lot of things happen in a marriage that start with finances. Finances aren't where somebody wants them because they want to spend more, or they feel like they can't spend enough, or somebody's spending behind the other one's back and they don't know about it, and that creates all types of problems in the marriage. You start dealing with trust issues, you start dealing with confidence issues, you start dealing with just everything in the marriage is no longer about two becoming one, but literally just two separate people decided they wanted to start living together, and maybe getting a tax break, and that just develops even bigger and bigger problems, because we as believers, as Christians, we know that our marriage should reflect how Christ looks at His bride, which is the church, which is us. And so in that context, well, that's us, looking to Christ for guidance. That's us trusting in Christ for our salvation. It's really us trusting in Christ for everything that we would have and do as we look on into eternity. And our marriage should be the same thing as we look towards one another, that we would trust one another and we would be able to rely on one another. But if you're doing those types of things behind each other's backs, that's just not able to be accomplished. And it can be hard to do that, especially if if you're that type of person that wants it your way, regardless of what anybody else thinks, including your spouse. But I would advise and say that if you're thinking about getting married and that's your type of mindset, that my stuff is my stuff and their stuff is their stuff and I don't care, and they're going to be their person and I'm going to be my person, and they can't touch any of my stuff and I can't touch any of their stuff, marriage probably isn't what you need to be thinking about right now. If you're already in that mindset that you just can't trust them with anything that you would call your own, and your marriage is something that you would also have to call your own and trust each other with, and all of those things. So those are just some of the things that we've learned, from going through the Financial Peace University. That we've also looked at Scripture, and Scripture tells us that the lender is slave to the debt. The debtor, the
borrower is slave to the lender.
Yeah, the borrower is slave to the lender. The debtor is slave to the lender. Those are the things that we see, and sometimes you have to forgive the things that you look at when it comes to your finances, as Christ told the parable of the king that forgave the man who owed a lot, and the man went out and found somebody who owed him money and wanted him thrown in jail, and the king found that man and was like, that's it, I forgave you a lot and you can't forgive somebody a little. Well, that's also the same in marriage, and sometimes it's the finances. Things are going to get messed up and you're going to do things wrong sometimes. But understand, as believers, if we are sinners who are forgiven, then we too should forgive sin. And that's what we try to strive and I think look for in our marriage. And we're not perfect at it. We still have some of our fights every now and then. And, my comic books, I think, sometimes take more precedence than what they should. And my whole nerddom in my life probably does as well. But I think with all the things we've looked at and the things that we've gone through in our marriage, we've become stronger because of it. And that's really because we communicate. We talk to one another. We let each other know where our worries are, where our stress is at. If we think we're going to be able to pay all of our bills for the month, or if we don't. But we try to make sure whenever the paychecks, before they get here, we know what we have to get done, what we need to get done. And that's those four walls, and we try to take care of that first. The roof over our head, the electricity in our house, the food that we will eat, and the clothes that we're going to put on. If we can take care of those four things, then everything else comes kind of after that. And that includes with our kids and with each other. If we can take care of each other that way, I think we're doing okay.
Yep. So, guys, our resource of the week is all things Dave Ramsey. We, like we talked about, his Financial Peace Revisited, as well as Financial Peace University, the DVD or CD set, and really just his website has all sorts of amazing things. We'll share that link in the show notes. And if you can find a Financial Peace University course in your neighborhood or in your community, we highly recommend you go through it. We were so impressed by this that we also helped pay for my sister and her husband to go through it.
Yep.
They have gone through it now twice, and they helped their family go through it as well. And it's just something that even if you decide not to stick to the budget the way that he suggests you do, which all of these principles come straight from Scripture. It's not anything new, nothing new under the sun, right? It just gives you good resources on ways to tackle some of the harder issues and to understand some of the harder areas. So we highly recommend you find that. We'll put some links in the show notes on how to find this stuff. And remember, as always, click subscribe. Click on that little bell so you get the notifications. I know we had said we were going to discuss some love and respect this week, but we've decided we're going to turn that into a little bit of a longer series, so that will be coming up in the future.
Yeah.
And come back next week to see kind of where we're going.
Yeah. And on today's show, guys, if there's any comments or questions that you have, just of the subject matter that we've covered, or how you may be dealing with something and would like to share your story, or just would like to ask advice of what to do in your certain situation, just take the comments down below, scroll through those, leave us a comment, let us know how we're doing, give us ideas, but definitely on this show, considering the money and everything else, feel free to ask us some questions. And last but not least, I wanted to give a plug to Jon Acuff. This is a pretty good book and a little bit of humor of on Dave Ramsey, which is Gazelle's Baby Steps and the 37 Other Things Dave Ramsey Taught Me About Debt. And I found it pretty humorous, and it kind of gives you a Cliff Notes version of a lot of the things you would learn in Financial Peace University. So if you find that somewhere, feel free to pick it up. But until next time, guys, stay blessed, stay healthy. Don't forget to communicate with your spouse, and always remember that we're loved because Christ loved us, and in that we should share that in our marriages. Well, God bless, guys, and we'll see you next time.